The pathologist who conducted the autopsy on the Member of Parliament for Buakwa North, J.B. Dankwa-Edu, has for the third time failed to present the report to an Accra District Court. The case has suffered 2 adjournments in the past as state prosecutors maintain the report is central to their case. The legislator was murdered in his home at Shiashi in 2016. 2 suspects, Daniel Esiedu and Vincent Bosso, are still standing trial, with the case traveling at a slow pace as it still remains at the lower courts. Dr. Lawrence Eduse is expected to appear in court on January 4, 2018. Joining us, Joseph Akable was in court in our reports.
Having missed 3 court hearings, Dr. Lawrence Eduse was expected to appear to enable the case to proceed. State Prosecutor DSP George Amega presented to the court proof of service of earlier court orders handed Dr. Eduse. He said they were unaware of the reasons for the pathologist's absence. Lawyer and Deputy General Secretary of the MPP, Nana Obribwan, who was watching brief, described the conduct of the pathologist as unacceptable.
The medical officer is treating us. That's what I'm saying, without sounding prejudicial. I'm not prejudicing what the learned judge said. But I think that this is the 3rd or the 4th time that this matter has suffered an adjournment as a result of the absence of the medical officer. It's unfair, it's unfortunate, it's unacceptable. But what can we do? Well, we all take instructions, directives from the judge. The judge says, do this. And so we are coming back on 4th January. This time around, we are praying that the medical officer will be available so that the committee could be done. This is, in fact, it's quite serious. That is the best way, because the doctor is not present. If the matter is adjourned without notifying him of the next adjourned date, it stands the possibility that he will not turn up. If you communicate to him by word of mouth, there's the possibility that he will tell you that he didn't hear from the court. So if you serve him with a hearing notice, that is adequate notice to the fact that the next agenda he must be present.
What remains to be seen is whether Dr. Lawrence Eduse will appear before the court on January 4, 2018. Reporting for Joy News, my name is Joseph Akable.
The Ghana Mine Workers Union is warning Ghana will have to contend with a lot more illegal miners, especially in the Takwa area, if Goldfields Ghana Limited goes ahead to lay off 1,700 of its workers. The workers claim the planned restructuring program will leave lots of workers out of job and with no option but to engage in the illicit trade, blamed for the destruction of the country's water bodies and forests. In a petition to Parliament to intervene, Deputy General Secretary of the Mine Workers Union, Abdul Mumen Bamba, says Goldfields Ghana Limited is being unfair to the workers.
Basically, it's about the potential loss of jobs, and to the extent that loss of jobs will lead to serious consequences on their families, the Takwa community, and Ghana as a whole. It must be underscored that, look, for every worker in Goldfields, and by extension for every worker in the mining industry, you have not less than 10 people depending on that worker. And so if you are laying off about 1,700 workers, the question you ask is, you are throwing out about 17,000 plus families. And so it's a real issue, and it's important that the representatives of the people get to know and put in the necessary interventions that be.
But if they can't continue employing the workers and they need to get them off in order to keep the business going, why are you stopping that?
My brother, it's not as if Ghana Mine Workers Union is stopping anybody from pursuing a business interest. We're talking about the unethical nature with which they want to pursue that interest. We must understand that the resource of this, the gold resources of this country belongs to its people. And so if you have an interest as an investor, you must make sure that your interest is activated in a manner that is responsible to its people also. You can't throw out about 1,700 into the streets. Is that fair? Sustainable mining requires that you take into account all the stakeholders and their interest. And a chunk of these numbers that we are talking about certainly come from the mining communities. And you know, Galamsey, which has become a national menace, and we are struggling to fight it. Are you actually throwing people into Galamsey? Is that what Alfred Bako and his team intend to do? These are real issues that we need to raise.
So that's actually a fear, that if care is not taken and all these people are taking off their jobs, then our fight against Galamsey may come to naught.
My brother, it's obvious. It's obvious. A hungry man is an angry man. And no, an idle hand certainly will find something to do. What we are saying is, with the current crop of workers that we have, it's not an option for them now. But certainly when you get out of employment under this kind of crude arrangement, certainly you will have to resort to something else to keep body and soul together. These are real issues that we are talking about.
Goldfields Ghana has meanwhile mounted a strong defense of its decision to lay off the workers, explaining it is the result of a decision to change its business model. Executive Vice President of Goldfields Ghana, Alfred Bako, in an interview with Joy News' Evans Mensam, also accused the Mine Workers Union of making unrealistic salary demands, forcing the company to outsource mining at its Tarkwa concession to a private contractor. Yava says about 90% of the workers who will be laid off will be rehired almost immediately by the private contractor.
We are busy evaluating changing our business model, and that is what we are busy with, which we have actually communicated to the workforce. So we are not sacking 1,700 if the evaluation proves positive. Yes, some of the workers will be affected.
Affected as in lose their jobs?
Not really. What is going to happen is that the workforce that will be affected will be given their severance package. And that severance package is as per the CA that we have with
the CA is
that is the collective agreement that we have with the Ghana Mine Workers Union. So we are changing the business. We are considering changing the business model, wrapping up from the current owner mining to contractor mining. And if it proves positive, which we will know in the next couple of weeks, then the affected employees will be paid their severance package, and is going to be a prerequisite with the contractors that they will absorb about 85% of the workers that will be affected. So in a nutshell, you're talking about net, maybe 10-15% that will be affected.
Okay, so I still want you to define in clear terms when you say affected. You say severance package, so you're severing your relationship with them. Doesn't that mean being sacked?
We will not say it's being sacked because we're changing the business model. Tarkwa, when we started, it was contractor mining. And we did a business study, and then it changed to owner mining. Following the economics that we currently have, where the gold price continues to fluctuate, where the union continues to ask us for unsustainable increases on wages, where our reagent costs are going through the roof, it's become necessary for us to reconsider our business to ensure sustainability. And that is why we are doing this. So in changing the business model back to contractor mining, then these workers that are going to be affected, they will use one hand to receive a check, which is the severance package, and 85% will use another hand to take offer letter from the contractors.
So just to explain it in my layman's language, you lose your job now, but you get an opportunity to be re-employed, re-engaged on a contract basis this time with under the new model. Is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Well, the Mine Workers Union has, however, protested a lot of the issues that the Chief Executive or the Vice President of Goldfields Ghana has had to say. They're saying that most of the things he says are complete falsehood. In other news, the High Commander of the Anti-Galamsey Task Force, Operation Vanguard, says there's no evidence to support media reports of illegal mining in the Tua forest. It had been reported on Tuesday that some illegal miners had found their way into the forest and are carrying out mining there. Commander of the Anti-Illegal Mining Task Force, Colonel William Ejepong, says there was no such activity when his men went into the forest to verify the reports. Here's his interview with Erastus Asare-Donko.
The planning at the strategic level and operational levels started way back, but on the ground, operational-wise, tactical-wise, we came into the theater at the end of July. And so we've been roughly in the theater about, let's say, 5 months. And I think that on paper, it looks very good. We have been able to effect as many as 699 arrests in Eastern region, Ashanti region, and Western region. In terms of the equipment that the illegal miners and some small-scale miners were using, we've been able to immobilize as many as getting to 3,000 shamfans. I'm talking about the portable waterborne machines that are used to destroy the water bodies. We've been able to also seize or immobilize over 69 excavators. But for me, the interesting thing is that the small-scale miners themselves came on board, and then during the period, we have monitored not less than 900 excavators that have been voluntarily moved from the various mining sites to the urban areas. And so in terms of statistics, this is where we stand. It's looking good, and I hope that by the time we get to the end, we will have something more better than what we have after this 4.5 months period. From where I sit and from the operations we have been conducting so far, I can say emphatically that no Operation Vanguard personnel has stooped so low to be compromised, as is being said. We will recall that people have been hiding behind the banner, behind the brand name Vanguard. In fact, some news items that came up recently in Western region and Eastern region was clear to the fact that people hide under the name of Vanguard and they sort of do whatever they want.
Watching Journey's Prime, we're taking a break, but still ahead in the bulletin, yet another student of Boku Senior Technical High School admitted to hospital in another case of suspected meningitis, as authorities continue to assure they have the situation under control. Now, one more student of the Boku Senior High Technical School has been admitted in hospital with suspected meningitis. His condition is said to be stable, according to Dr. Clement Opong, the medical director of the Boku Presby Hospital. Meanwhile, the 8 students earlier said to have tested negative for the disease are still on admission, as hospital authorities continue to observe them to ensure they are completely clear before they are discharged. There's, however, not been any improvement in the situation of the student from Tempane SHS whose condition was declared critical on Wednesday. Also, the Upper East Regional Health Directorate met with managers of senior high schools Thursday afternoon to deliberate on measures to curb the meningitis outbreak in the schools. Upper East Region Director of Health, Dr. Winfred Ufusu, spoke to Joy News after the meeting.
Basically to deliberate on how we're going to carry out the screening, health screening of first-year students in all the secondary schools, public secondary schools in the country as part of the free SHS package. So we agree on the modalities. In the time past, this is not the first time the screening is being done. In the time past, the screening has been done, but it has not been coordinated nationally, and it has also been done often by some private. But this time, it's being coordinated from the national level. It is much more comprehensive because we are going to look at screen all the students, the first year students, to determine whether they have any health problems. At where we are within the meningitis belt, from October every year to April, or let me say when the race begin, and we will always have upsurge of meningitis cases because we are in meningitis endemic area. So we always prepare, one, to detect the cases and then also to manage them. So in terms of the logistics and stocks at our health facilities, they are already there. And the public sensitization of information is also ongoing.
Well, Joy News correspondent Albert Sorry, he's joined me on the line now. He's been speaking with the medical director of the Bawku Presbyterian Hospital, Dr. Clement Opong. Now, Albert, what can you tell us as far as the casualties and the number of cases in these schools in the Upper East region are concerned?
Okay, Israel. So far we've recorded 10 cases now. One death that was recorded yesterday, confirmed to have been as a result of meningitis. There is one student who is currently in critical condition. He is from the Timpani Senior High School. In fact, I spoke with the medical director a while ago, and he told us that this student is still, his condition has not improved since yesterday, and so he's still in critical condition. Now, this evening, one more student was admitted, and it was that student who, increased the number to 10. Right. And this student is currently being checked. It hasn't been confirmed if his condition is as a result of meningitis, but his samples are being taken for the test to be done. Now, the other 8 are those that the doctor said had tested negative to meningitis, but whom they are still closely observing to be sure they are cleared before they can be discharged.
Now, in other schools around the country, looking at the Kumasi Academy, for instance, there was some panic and parents rushing to the school to want to withdraw their wards. Is that the sense you're getting at the Bawku Senior High Technical School?
Yes, the regional health director has told us that most of the students have panicked, actually, and that they are getting a situation where the least sign of headache or the least sign of sickness, the students panic and they think it may be as a result of meningitis. And so it's brought some uneasiness in amongst the students who are also writing their end-of-term exams at the moment. We are told that some parents have gone to the school to check on their ward, but because of the fact that the health officials have been to the school, they've screened the students and they've given them that assurance that they are monitoring to ensure that if anybody is showing signs, the person is helped. It's brought the issue under control, at least compared to what we saw in other schools when parents were rushing to get their wards out of the schools.
All right, thank you very much, Upper East correspondent Albert Sorry, bringing us up to speed with the details there from his region. Now, we just have the statement coming from the Ghana Education Service, and I'm just going to read a bit of it to you. It's titled, Update on Health Situation in Some Senior High Schools. And it says the Ghana Education Service wishes to update the general public in respect of the recent outbreak of H1N1 influenza and meningitis, which has resulted in the deaths of some students of our senior high schools. Now, the statement doesn't go on to say how many people have died and the number of cases that we're looking at, but it talks about some of the interventions that have been put in place since then, especially with regards to Kumasi Academy. And then in respect of Damango Senior High School, Bawku Senior High Technical School, Koforidua Senior High Technical School, and Tampene Senior High School, where meningitis is suspected to have caused the deaths of some students, we are awaiting the medical report from the Ghana Health Service, including their recommendations on the way forward, and will update the public accordingly upon receipts. The Ghana Health Service is monitoring the situation in all senior high schools across the country. Now, I'm joined on the line right now by Reverend Jonathan Bette. He's a PRO of the Ghana Education Service. Good evening, and thank you for making time, Reverend Bette.
Good evening to you, my good brother.
All right, now let's look at the situation. How many schools are we looking at that the Ghana Education Service is embarking on this or is doing this monitoring?
Well, thank you. As the epidemic is spreading, we made provision to make sure that almost all the schools in the country are alerted through the regional directors and the district directors, including the headmasters, that in case of any information received from the students, the attention of the health directors should be drawn. So we are not looking at a particular area. We've realized that as the epidemic is spreading, we need to draw our attention to almost all the schools in the country. So the regional directors have been informed, the district directors too have been informed about all.
All right, so for now, according to your statement, you're essentially just monitoring the situation and you're waiting to get medical reports from the Ghana Health Service. But in the situation of Kumasi Academy, you're talking about some steps that have been taken. Can you please take us through these steps?
Well, Kumasi Academy, according to the health director, it has been it's off. I can say that that one has been controlled as I'm talking to you. So we haven't received any information as to whether there is another one coming out from any quarters. For now, Kumasi is being controlled.
All right. How is it being controlled? I can imagine that, well, yes, it is under control, but what?
Well, the vaccination had gone. Everybody has been vaccinated, teachers and workers and all those people within the catchment area of the school. Health directors did their best to vaccinate them. And as I'm talking to you now, there is nothing like a new development over there. We are grateful to God that for now, things have died down.
There was also talk by the Ghana Health Service of contact tracing of people who went into the school and got into contact with some of the students and the need for them to be traced. Has that been done?
Well, information had gone to all the people involved to report to the health facility for this treatment. And we believe that they have done that. In case any of them were not able to do that, I believe strongly health directors, for example, all the regional hospitals are ready to take an action on anybody who might have complained about such sickness or disease.
All right, thank you very much, Reverend Jonathan Bette. We'll leave it there. Reverend Jonathan Bette is the Public Relations Officer of the Ghana Education Service. We're taking a break here. We'll bring you business news next with George Riafu. Stay tuned.
Good evening and you're welcome to Business on the Joy News Prime. Now let's settle for the details. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority is taking steps to connect local exporters with foreign partners and businesses. To this end, the authority has launched the Market Hub, an online portal that will actually provide real-time information about Ghanaian products. Now, Gifty Klenam is Chief Executive of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority and has been talking to Joy Business about how this strategy would help increase the current export earnings from 2.5 billion Ghana cedis to 10 billion cedis in 2018.
The launch of the market portal aims at making Ghanaian exporters competitive on the world stage. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority, GEPA, says the move will help connect local exporters to their foreign partners and other businesses. Gifty Klenam is the Chief Executive Officer of GEPA. She tells Joy Business the new portal also forms part of moves to increase annual export earnings from 2.5 million cedis in 2016 to 10 million this year.
GEPA rebranding itself, it's making itself visible for exporters, the buyers and the sellers. That is the whole vision. We believe that we cannot be operating in the dark. And Ghana has a lot of products that are exportable. We as Ghana Export Promotion Authority, it's up to us to identify those products, develop them for the export market. So as much as we are targeting specific markets, it is also relevant that throughout the year, 24 hours that each country has is able to reach up to us, and then they will be able to assess our market. Our target is to raise and generate revenue of about 10 billion for the government. And so with this, at least it's going to enhance the exports.
Meanwhile, Deputy Vice Chairman of the Association of Ghanaian Exporters, Frederick Aye, has welcomed the move. According to him, the Market Hub portal will go a long way to increase productivity of exporters across the country.
The private sector can't go solo on its own because we will need to have to collaborate with government agencies because of policies. And because of that, as private sector export organization, we work closely with them. And therefore, if they are resourced enough and they have that, let's say, financial capabilities, they'll be able to help us a lot. Because some of the policies, in terms of its practicability, they have to also lead in a way.
The Market Hub online portal is a collaboration between Ghana Export Promotion Authority, GEPA, the Government of Switzerland, and the Trade Capacity Building Program.
Well, from exports, let's look at the Ghana cedi and how it is fared, because the local currency is still struggling to firmly stabilize against the dollar on the interbank market. Now, it actually was steady slightly against the dollar to close at 4 Ghana cedis, 50 pesos. Now, for most businesses that join business have engaged, their concern is about how the cedi has not been doing that well, and every day those heavy blips that we actually been witnessing. So, what are the suggestions on the table? Well, we try to pick the thoughts of Dr. Kofi Amoah. He is a businessman and an economist.
Economic stability is a process. How do you reduce inflation? You must tackle it. You look at the supply side. You have inflation because we are not producing enough. So now how are you going to do the production? You focus on strengthening the private sector by bringing the cost of credit down, by giving them the facilities, bringing their taxes down. So I think you see that this government's approach is on the supply side of the economy, not on too much on the consumption side. We've always been looking at the consumption side. Consumption is costly. The supply side is revenue. So now with that, if we keep going this track, one district, one factory, then I think we will get there eventually.
So let's come back to the bit about the Ghana cedi. I know you're in the import business. We've seen some serious blips. For you, how do we stabilize the situation, and even going into next year, that will be a very tough time for us, Q1, when businesses are importing more to restock?
Well, I think the right policy has to be what kind of imports can we substitute with local production. We cannot be a nation that can produce something domestically by employing our own people and curtailing on the import expenditure. We've been importing all kinds of things that we don't have to import. So I think one of the things is reduce the level of imports, create domestic production to substitute for those items, and then the economy gets stronger.
And that was Dr. Kofi Amoah actually sharing his thoughts on what can be done to ensure that the cedi that is actually dancing some while ago becomes a little bit stabilized. Let's do something news for those who are contributors to the pension scheme. And the State Pension Trust, SSNIT, has indicated that it is working with some regulatory agencies to possibly review pension benefits. Now, this follows concerns by some contributors that they are not getting enough in terms of benefits. Now, Board Chair Dr. Kwame Adokufo tells Joy Business they have come very far in engaging the Pensions Regulatory Authority for Parliament's consideration.
You see, the organized labor have told us they are not satisfied with the benefits we are giving. And we've told them we are interpreting the law as we see it. So now TUC and SSNIT have written memoranda. We are going to give the documents to MPRA, that's the regulator. And after that, if there's no consensus, we shall go to the higher level, that is Parliament, and whatever they decide to be final.
And for you, is it about ensuring that we take more, if I'm a pensioner, I take more home, or the structure or even the contribution should also be reviewed so that if I go home after 70 years, I'll be getting more?
Look, whatever you take as benefit is dependent on the pay you are receiving. It's a fraction of the pay you are receiving. Generally, salary levels in Ghana are not very high. So you can't expect to receive low salaries and then princely sums when you go on retirement. Everything is regulated by Parliament, and SSNIT can do very little. What we can do is to plug the loopholes I was talking about. There were a lot of irregularities at SSNIT, and since this board came into office with the management, we've tried to plug all of them, and that one I promise.
And that would also have an impact on the benefits.
It will help. It will help. If the tank is not leaking, you preserve more water. So that's going to help.
The economists will say all other things being equal. Are we hoping that if this plan materializes, going to MPRA, I know you've done your homework well, MPRA will give you thumbs up, good work, let's forward it to Parliament. Could this happen maybe by next year if all things work?
Parliament is independent, and I don't want to predict what they are going to do. Everything will depend on Parliament.
Okay.
When they finish work, we start work.
Okay. So some would say some good news for those who are contributing to the pension scheme. Let's do economy. And Vice President Dr. Mohamed Bawumia said the disbursement of the $1 million for each constituency should start from next year. According to Bawumia, this is actually a plan by a government to develop infrastructure at the local level. Now, he made this remark in a keynote address at the launch of the Ghana Economic Club. Ebenezer Sabuti has more in this report.
The government, upon assumption of office, promised to allocate these funds to support the development of local assemblies by providing basic infrastructure at that level. The Vice President says government has made allocation for the funds and disbursement will begin for the various assemblies. According to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, this is part of measures to bridge the infrastructure gap between urban and rural communities.
The fact that in many of the rural and deprived communities, there's a real problem of basic infrastructure, water, toilets, sanitation. So basic infrastructure is not available. And this is why we have decided to say, well, let us take 20% of the capital budget and make it available for each district. And that is what we are doing, each constituency. So this is 20% of the capital budget, and we are sharing it amongst an average of about $1 million a constituency each year. 2018 will be the first real full year of the implementation of this program. And we hope that in so doing, at the rural level, the problems of water, the problems of toilets, and so on, the basic infrastructure that are needed can be solved.
The Vice President was speaking at the launch of the Economic Club of Ghana. The club is made up of some economists and members of academia with the objective of creating the platform for discussions on developing the economy.
And that's all for business. Let's draw the curtain down on the business segment of the Joy News Prime. My name is George Yafe. Have a good evening.
The minority in Parliament is accusing the NPP administration of betraying the youth after government allocated the Ministry of Youth and Sports less than 30% of its budgetary request for 2018. The ministry asked for 102 million cedis, but was giving 32 million cedis, representing a 35% reduction in what the ministry got in 2017. Former Youth and Sports Minister and MP for Wa Central, Rashid Pelpo, says this shows the NPP government isn't committed to youth development.
For a government that has campaigned on the back of youth development, giving them jobs and etc., and for them to ironically allocate this small amount of money to them is serious. It's a betrayal of the people. It's a betrayal of the youth. And I hope they will understand that they are not being taken care of. Just imagine that $32 million Ghana cedis allocation, 16 million is going to pay workers compensation. 12 million is going to acquire goods and services and administration. So you have only about 2.7 million for the real youth and sports activities, which is next to nothing. You are talking about a nationwide activity that should develop sports, that should create opportunities for young people, that should let them realize their potential, and etc., etc. That should create the situation where we can say Ghana is competing with the rest of Africa and the world, you know. So it shows that we are not committed to developing our young people. We are not committed to what we want our nation to move in the next generation, because it's a young person who is the future of the nation. So it is actually a betrayal of the youth for us to get the youth to vote for a government that eventually will turn its back on them.
Finally, what do you expect from government? Well, the budget has been approved, but can anything more be done?
I expect that the government should take a cue from the complaints we are giving. They should take, take it serious that youth development is a critical element in any nation's development, and that in next year's budget they should allocate more to the ministry. And again, if there is a budget review next year, they should re-examine the fact that a ministry that has requested 102 million and given 32 million, as important as this ministry, should be re-looked, so that we can be confident that this is a government that looking at the youth development of our nation and the sports development of our nation. Look at the institutes, the youth leadership training institutes in the 10 regions of Ghana. They are folding up because they can't even sustain them. They can't keep the students there. It's very serious. And I think that the ministry, on behalf of the government, should begin to re-examine their policy towards youth development in this country.
Youth and Sports Minister Isaac Asiamah, however, disagrees. He says more than 75 million cedis in additional support will be made available for youth development from the District Assembly Common Fund to make up for the budget cuts.
You know, now there's 5% allocation to the National Youth Authority from the Common Fund. It started this year. That alone gives them about, this year the allocation was 76 billion Ghana cedis. So there is a support, huge one, coming from the National Youth Authority. It wasn't there in the past.
Outside this budget?
Yes.
Ministry of Youth and Sport?
Yes, that's an allocation from the Common Fund. Normally the Common Fund formula comes to Parliament, and then all these allocations are made. So we are now happy about that allocation. Because let me tell you, I gave you a scenario of 22 million Ghana cedis that Parliament approved for the year 2016. That was for the entire ministry and its agencies. Now, one of our agencies, NYE, National Youth Authority, is receiving support from the Common Fund. It hasn't happened before. As I said, this year, 76 million Ghana cedis. Next year, it may go up. So put the two together. It's for youth development. It's for youth. It's for youth development. So the 32 million essentially will go into sports. The goods and services go into sports. Essentially, almost everything will go into sports. And even this year, we did the same thing. We asked the Youth Authority to concentrate on whatever they have, and they agreed. So essentially, all the
minority MPs are also concerned the cuts could affect sports development in the country. Haruna Idrisu is minority leader.
If you look at the budget estimate, and I refer you to the very last paragraph, probably page 16, even though you are not, you've said that the numbers, from 46 million to 32 million Ghana. Mr. Speaker, change has come. Where is the change? A change must not reflect in a decline of budgetary allocations. This is not even manifested. Change have come. A declining change. A change where budgetary allocation is on a decline. And Mr. Speaker, it only reminds me of a Dagomba proverb. An old funeral dirge singing and responding to the chorus is very easy. And the chorus today is inadequate budgetary allocation.
Still in Parliament, the minority has served notice it will oppose any plans by government to sell VRA's thermal plants under a new restructuring program. Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu says the move will not be in the interest of the country. He was speaking after Parliament approved a budget of about 900 million cedis for the ministry for the year 2018.
Volta River Authority, Mr. Speaker, let me signal that we on this side will not support any sale of any asset of the Volta River Authority. We would not support it. It is not in the best national interest. If you are talking of private sector participation within the energy sector, it already exists. That's why you have independent power producers already in the thermal regime. You only have Pui and then Akusumbo doing hydro. So let me signal strongly that you will not have our support going forward with any attempt to sell any thermal assets of the VRA. We will work with you to reform VRA to make it more efficient. Now that you are appreciating that we and VRA must be made together, advice which you refused 10 years ago, not you personally, but other players in the sector. Mr. Speaker, I'm satisfied with the performance of the ministry, except that again, Ghana beyond 8, the battle can only be the loss. Look at page 14 of your budget, 914 million. 764 million is to come from donors. The battle can only be the loss. Because if the donors fail you will fail this country, not intentionally, but because you are dependent on donors in order to execute this important thing. Mr. Speaker, there is also claim.
Well, Energy Minister Boakye Agyarko assured the VRA assets will be protected and that the plants are not up for sale, or no aspect of VRA is up for sale.
Mr. Speaker, the policy of government in restructuring VRA is to create VRA as a holding company with subsidiaries reporting into the holding company. The hydro assets will all be classified in a subsidiary, Ghana Hydro, as an example of a name, that will maintain and develop all the hydro assets and resources that God has endowed to this country. There will be a second subsidiary that will then put together under its canopy all the thermal assets that belong to VRA. Mr. Speaker, indeed, there is an intention to sell some specific assets, not the entire caboodle of assets of VRA. That correction is important. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it is only one thermal asset that is up for sale. But Mr. Speaker, who can contemplate a 20-year-old TAPCO asset still on the book of records of VRA and not contemplate the sale of such an old asset or a rejuvenation of it? Mr. Speaker, who can look at the asset T3, know the poor state in which it is, that in its entire life has only operated for mere 7 months, and not contemplate that this is not an asset that must be on the books of VRA. So indeed, Mr. Speaker, there is the need to look individually at the assets of VRA on the thermal side. But suffice it to say that I want to assure my friends opposite that there will be a VRA thermal subsidiary that holds the thermal assets of VRA.
This is Joy News Prime.
A newly built 3-unit classroom block and library has been handed over to the Papu Roman Catholic Primary School in the Nadoli Kalio district of the Upper West Region. Prior to the donation, the pupils had to hold classes under a dilapidated structure that was on the verge of collapse and could only be described as a death trap. Development financing expert and philanthropist Professor Nicholas Biakwe, who hails from the area, also renovated the junior high school block of the community at a total cost of 138,000 Ghana cedis. Rafiq Salam reports.
This is the Papu Roman Catholic Primary School. This is where the dreams and aspirations of 154 children from this community are expected to manifest. Yet, it is not only jaded, but dilapidated as well. It was built some 30 years ago by the community members to save children from walking long distances to other communities for schooling. It appears that dream and aspiration of the children are not only fading, but being threatened with the unconducive and life-threatening environment they found themselves. The building can simply be described as a death trap. The entire walls of the building have cracks or gaping holes. In the night, it serves as a pen for animals such as sheep and goats. Droppings of the animals are littered over the classrooms, thereby producing pungent smell, distracting the pupils during classes hours. Due to lack of kitchen for the school, one of the dilapidated classrooms has been converted into a kitchen. Idrisu Salifu is the headmaster of Papua Roman Catholic Primary School.
During rainy season, we have a lot of problems, especially when it rains. We used to have goats and sheep entering the classroom alongside with teaching and learning, which most of our teachers find it very difficult to cope up with. Then again, the bad nature of the building itself seems to be dangerous to the people, since we have the people who like to be playing around. And besides, we start class very late as a result of what? Tidying the classroom or the environment before learning will kick off.
However, all will now be a thing of the past, following the donation of a 3-unit classroom block and a library to the community by a native of the area. Professor Nicholas Biekpe is a development financing expert and a philanthropist based in South Africa.
The schools were all crumbling, so the teachers contacted me and the people contacted me to call the chief and wanted me to help. First, this help was for the school that we are at now. It was all crumbling, so we did repair that. And then, but then when I suddenly realized that they had no primary school, that they were actually sitting outside, so we then shifted to the primary school. Number 2 was the library. They have no books at all. So we've now, with the help of my daughter, who is also in England, she's busy collecting books for the library. You know, you build yourself a big house, but that is not a good investment for me. A good investment is to investment in the community.
Nadoli Keleo District Director of the Ghana Education Service, Valentine Domapiele, was very grateful to Professor Biekpe for the kind gesture. Reporting for Joy News, Rafik Salam, Papu, Nadoli Keleo District.
Elsewhere, the Ahonga at Tiahipa Municipal Assembly Basic School is rated a poor performing basic school in the Basic Education Certificate Examination in the Keta municipality of the Volta region. The poor performance has been blamed on the lack of teaching and learning materials, especially textbooks. This, according to school authorities, makes it difficult for pupils to understand examination questions before answering them. To help improve performance of pupils, the Ghana Institute of Surveyors has provided a well-stocked library to the school.
Angloga Tiepe Municipal Assembly Basic School is one of the deprived basic schools in the Keta municipality. It lacks classroom as well as teaching and learning materials. This situation hinders delivery of quality education, which continues to affect performance of pupils, especially in the Basic Education Certificate Examination.
Many were taken to private institutions, as if a better teaching is not taking place here with us. Another challenge we are facing as a school is not having computer laboratory. Neither do we have computers with its accessories for practical work. Therefore, it also hinders the academic work and many more free time will not permit.
To ease challenges the school is facing, the Ghana Institute of Surveyors has handed over a well-stocked library where pupils can have access to textbooks and other reading materials. The Ghana Institute of Surveyors also plans to reward pupils who excel in the BECE.
For the past 10 years or so, the best student had 22, and did 22. So just to make sure that we see the impact of furnishing them with textbooks, which the government cannot provide. not part of the package of the president. The government, we provided them with several type of books. We want to see if they are actually using it and the impact. So we set up a challenge that if anyone is able to get 6 to 12, will come in to present an award.
Final year pupils who are preparing for the BEC are already taking advantage of the library.
This library is a safe place for us to study because we don't have a safe place to study. So if we come here, and this place will be silent for us, and we'll study and do well in our BEC.
This library will help me because some of us, we are from a poor home. Our parents didn't have money to buy textbooks for us. So this library will help us to learn more.
The school's Early Childhood Development Center will be the next target for the surveyors. Fred Kwame Asares reports for Joy News.
Now, the Takoradi Market Circle, just like many other markets in the country, struggles with the management of filth, indiscriminate disposal of refuse, particularly solid waste, and faulty drainage systems in and around the market have over time created a serious public health concern for both traders and patrons of the market. Natalia Kwanzaa from our partner station Radio Max visited the market in our report.
It's about 9:30 in the morning and I am here at the Takoradi Market, where businesses are gradually picking up. Traders in all sorts of wares and commodities are busy beckoning people to come buy from them. But right there in the backdrop are heaps of garbage piled up at almost every corner of the market, especially the inner perimeter, known as the market circle. Despite the stench, it's business as usual for the hawkers and traders.
This is the center of the market. It is not right to have refuse here. City authorities must find a way to clear this place.
Containers will leak.
The refuse container leaks. So when people pour water in it, it messes this whole place up. They should fix it. This place is dirty. You have house flies all over. Sanitation officers want us to give them money before they do their work.
Unlike the traders, the patrons who have come to buy this morning are unhappy about the insanitary conditions at the markets.
This market smells because people fill the drains with refuse. And the containers are not emptied for over a month.
And not comfortable, but the only thing is that thing that I have bought, I have to clean it well before I use it. That's the only thing I can do.
Abdul Karim Hudu is the second-D Takoradi Metropolitan Environmental Health Officer. He blames the houses close to the markets.
We do register people who are around the market circle, that is the stores. Those who do not have refuse containers, we ensure that they have the refuse container. But people are very stubborn over there. You make them buy the refuse containers, and when you don't monitor them, then they will throw these refuse containers, and then they will start putting the refuse on the floor. And that is mostly that is why you go there, and after, since you see that over there refuse are lying on the floor.
The assembly says it is trying its possible best. The contractors say they are doing all they can, whilst the traders say they are managing the situation. It is, however, the final consumers who will bear the brunt of the filthy environment should there be an outbreak of disease. Refuse scattered all over. The people said it is worrisome, especially those who live and work around the market circle. They want the assembly to do more, though they are doing their best. For Joy News, in Athalia Kwansa, Takoradi, Western Region.
Government has outlined a number of plans it hopes will help revamp the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. There have been fears the state broadcaster, which is presently reeling from massive debt, could fold unless some major intervention is made. Some MPs, during discussions about the Information Ministry's budgetary allocation for 2018, were of the view the 107 million cedis allocated to the entire ministry will not be enough to settle the 44 million cedis owed by GBC alone. But Sector Minister Mustafa Hamid says negotiations have begun with the Electricity Company of Ghana, which owns a chunk of GBC's debt. He also talks about plans to commercialize some units of the state broadcaster.
We are working with ECG to see how they can, if you want, give us a payment plan so that we graduate the payment of our debts and pay bit by bit. Yeah. We are appealing to government. We've made that appeal already, that the Minister for Finance should allow us to keep all our money, our internally generated funds. You know, all state institutions are also mandated per law to repatriate 66% of their internally generated funds to government coffers. So we are pleading that we be treated as an exceptional case and allowed to keep our internally generated funds. So hopefully, if we keep all of our internally generated funds, we'll be able to find enough money to be able to pay our debts. For now, that is the strategy. And then also, we have multiple channels. GBC has live, sports, GBC 24, etc., etc. So there are a few channels that we have asked the Director General of GBC to do a business plan to commercialize, you know, so that we don't have to keep all these channels as social broadcasting channels. It is not correct. We need to commercialize a few of those channels and then use the money that we generate from those commercial channels to be able to keep GBC running. So we're going to do that also well as a strategy. We won't allow GBC to collapse. It's not going to happen. So hopefully by the middle of next year, we just inaugurated a new board for GBC. So we want to give them about 6 months to be able to get their acts together and give us a concrete plan for the commercialization project that I talked about.
He explains how GBC came to owe the Electricity Company of Ghana so much.
GBC is indebted to, if you want, various organizations, but the biggest one is Electricity Company of Ghana, which is about something over 16 million Ghana cedis. In all, GBC owes up to about 44 million Ghana cedis to various organizations and so on. But at the same time also, other people also owe GBC. But on the net, GBC is indebted. And the reason all of it is mostly power, in relation to power or electricity, is that GBC has transmitters across the country because it is the national broadcaster. It is also a social broadcaster. And because people have a right to information, whether we like it or not, we must reach every Ghanaian. We are not a private entity. We don't have a luxury of deciding areas where we will make profit and areas where we cannot make profit and then we shut down. We cannot shut down. And so we are having to keep all our transmitters across the country running. And sometimes it takes up to about 50,000 to buy fuel, even to power these things. So we are powered on electricity. And as I said, even if electricity goes off, we are compelled to go and buy diesel, you know, to power our transmitter stations. And so our electricity costs are really very, very high. And so Electricity Company of Ghana these days has taken to cutting power to our transmitters. So I wrote to the Minister for Energy and pleaded with him that because we have an obligation towards the Ghanaian people, it will be difficult if we cut power to the transmitters and then they don't work, because we will be denying people access to information.
Now, most men who go into the labor ward to witness their spouses giving birth have returned with varying impressions. While some faint, unable to bear the sight, others are scarred for life. For Kwabena Tijani John, a self-confessed serial wife beater, He vowed never to lay a finger on his wife again after watching her sister-in-law undergo a cesarean section. A visibly shaking Tijani has been sharing his experience with Joy News' Jojo Kobna.
Here's Kwabna Tijani John, a resident of Panda in the northern region, making the great confession.
I beat my wife. That was on 20th September 2017. I was from farm. When I came to the house, I told my wife to fetch water for me to bath. She did not. That she was doing another thing again. I decided to go and beat my wife. I beat. She was even pregnant. I beat and I used my leg when I was beaten. I used my leg again. That is the reason why I beat my wife.
He had always come to believe that paying the bride price for the wife meant he owned her, which gave him the right to do as he pleases with her.
We went and just took them as our wife, and what we did, we just think we have bought the women, and that makes us not to show some kind of respect to them. We don't show some kind of respect to them. We see them nothing. But today, what I've seen, I'm telling all concubines and all the relatives that what I've saw today, let's give respect to the women. The women are suffering because of us. Let's respect the women.
After watching an obstetrician cut open his sister-in-law to give him a nephew, Kwabna Tijani John is forced to unlearn his bad habits.
I'm very shocked. What I've seen today, what the doctor have did to the lady, I'm very shocked. Now that we give respect to our wife, from now, if I even been to my house, I will tell what I've saw, what the doctor is doing to the lady. We will give respect to them. But at first, we're not giving respect to them.
Well, if the surgical theatre could change a serial wife beater, then perhaps a law that sentences women bashers to serving time in a labor ward may just go a long way to minimize the incidence of domestic violence on women. Jojo Kobna, Joy News.
Right, so I sought to find out the bride price that Tijani paid for the wife. It turned out that it consisted, some goats, some other livestock, all amounting to 1,200 cedis. That's the bride price. We're taking a break. And in the headlines, yet another student of Boku Senior High Technical School has been admitted to hospital in another case of suspected meningitis, as health authorities continue to assure they have the situation under control. Trial of suspected killers of late Ibuakwa North MP JB Dankwedu held up again over the failure of the pathologist to present the autopsy report. The Ghana Mine Workers Union is warning of an upsurge in illegal mining over the decision by Goldfields Ghana to lay off over 1,000 of its workers. The company has, however, been justifying the decision. It says would actually see a majority of the workers being rehired. In business, Ghana Export Promotion Authority says newly launched online portal to link exporters to various available markets abroad will significantly boost export earnings.